Okay, welcome everyone. This is the first class of Why Jesus is the Son of Man. Thank you all for coming. Let me get my... I have some things to give away here. I have some free gifts. I have 14 or 15 copies here. And if you don't get a copy tonight, I'll have some more next week. So let me start by passing these around. You already have one or not? No? Okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome. You have a problem? You want two or one? Okay.
Beautiful. How are you? You're beautiful.
Okay, we got two remaining. All right, that's good. That worked out good. Because I have another box coming, but it won't arrive till tomorrow or the next day. Hi, come on in. We just started.
So we can underline and make notes in the book?
It's your book. You do anything you want with it. And I write in books all the time. Sometimes I write in the book, no, you're wrong.
Is there a book?
Oh, yes. Sorry.
All right. Thank you.
Okay. So this class is based on the book that I wrote. We're going to go through the book. That's what we're going to do. But I want you to interact. I want you to ask questions. Tonight I'm going to explain to you how I got to the point of deciding to write this book. And maybe some of you are at that point now, or maybe that's why you're here. The class is live streamed on Facebook, so we're recording live right now. And later this evening, I copy the video and I move it up to my YouTube channel right here. So if you write that down, if you ever miss a class or want to look at it later, Facebook deletes the videos after 30 days, but they stay on YouTube forever. So take a picture or write it down. It's pretty easy to remember. You go to YouTube, Ralph Yost 1. Now, if you prefer, instead of the paper copy, if you prefer an electronic copy, like for your Kindle or something, if you email me, I'll email you the copy. And then you can put it right on your Kindle. So there's my email address. If you want to write that down. And then while we're doing that, I'm going to pass around a sign-up sheet. I ask you to sign this, please. And then if I ever have to cancel for some reason, like suppose I get sick or then I can contact you all and let you know that of a last-minute class cancellation. I don't want anybody to ever come here if the class is not held. I want to take a picture of the people here in this class. So let's try doing this. Got it. I hope everybody was smiling.
Nobody in Memphis.
Nobody in Memphis? We'll see. So let me explain a couple things about how I teach my classes. I call all my classes advanced for beginners. I observed a long time ago that I believe that so many Bible studies at churches are given at one level. And I thought, well, there's multiple levels. I mean, you go to school and you're not in third grade for the rest of your life, right? So I wanted to teach advanced concepts to people, but I have the obligation to explain them in a way that you all can understand. So you don't need to be an advanced person to be in my class, but we're going to get into some things that are going to be maybe a little deeper than you're used to. But my obligation is to explain it. And your obligation is to let me know if you don't understand, which means my part isn't sufficient. So it means I didn't explain it sufficiently, right? So you need to give me another chance to explain it if you don't get it. All right? I had somebody come to my last class for a long time, and then he stopped coming. And I approached him at church. And I said, "How come you're not in class?" It's too much for it. It's too heavy for me. I don't comprehend it. I said, "But you didn't tell me." He just dropped out. So please don't do that. Okay? I want everybody to understand things. Okay? So, the reason why I teach is because I like to learn. And I hope you're all here because you want to learn. And I have this thing in me that I can't get rid of. And when I learn something, I want to share it with other people. Okay? And that's how I got into writing books. I thought, well, I'm going to just write down things that I learned. So I started writing books. And then I used the books as the basis for my class. So this introduction is about how I ended up writing this specific book. In many years of Bible study, I read how Jesus often referred to himself as the Son of Man. Have you all noticed that? Maybe that's why you're all here. Okay? That's good. That's good. Because you have an inquisitive mind. You want to learn something. And I passed it on, though, presuming that each time he mentioned it, that he was the Son of Man, he was referring to his humanity. Is there anybody else that has that same belief? Is that what you always thought? Well, he's talking about his humanity, right? Well, I had to come to the realization that, guess what? His humanity was self-evident. There he was. He was a man. He didn't need to tell you, I'm a man. Right? There's a lot more to it. And that's what everything is about here in this class. So, it is true that God did become man and came to earth as the God-man known as Jesus Christ. And what is one of his names? Emmanuel, which is what? God is with us. Okay? There it is. The sayings of Jesus that he is the Son of Man and those that refer to his return at the eschaton. Do you know what the eschaton is? Okay. The eschaton is the end time. Right? When Jesus returns and the events leading up to the return of Jesus, the prophecies such as the 70th week of Daniel, the rise of the Antichrist, right? We've heard of these things. Those are all in the large time period we call the eschaton. It's a word that I use kind of frequently. Okay? So the sayings of Jesus that he is the Son of Man and those that refer to his return at the eschaton began to take on a new interest for me. I've studied eschatology for most of my Christian life. So that's going on 39 years now. Okay? I got very intrigued with eschatology the very first time I read through the Bible, and I got to the book of Revelation and said, wow, I don't know anything about what this is, but I want to learn it. And that's what started my interest in eschatology. Do you know what eschatology is? I'm using a word. It's the study of end times. When you have ology on something, it means the study of, right? Okay? So when I asked others why Jesus referred to himself so often as the Son of Man, they either didn't know or concluded that it was a reference to his humanity. It's the most frequent answer that you'll get. So I encourage you to do that. As you learn more about the Son of Man in this class, just take a little private poll. Ask your friends. Tell me, why do you think Jesus is the Son of Man? And see what they say. So as I studied further, I came to realize that Jesus his repeated use of this title was more than a reference to his humanity. Okay? We know that he referred to it as his suffering, his death, burial, and his resurrection. Right? Didn't Jesus say the Son of Man must suffer at the hands of the Gentiles? Didn't he say the Son of Man will be buried like the sign of Jonah, 3 days and 3 nights? Didn't he say the Son of Man must rise after 3 days? Right? So there's a lot more to just his humanity. Instead, he was alluding to the vision of Daniel 7:13 and 14. So, I encourage you to open your Bibles to Daniel 7. We're going to be referring to that a lot in this class. And if you are a verse underliner like I am, underline these 2 verses, 7:13 and 14. So many times when Jesus called himself the Son of Man, he was alluding to these 2 verses right here, where it says, one like a Son of Man comes with the clouds of heaven, approaches the Ancient of Days, and is given dominion, glory, and an everlasting kingdom. By identifying himself with this figure, Jesus revealed that the title Son of Man was not a restricted description of his human nature, but an affirmation of his divine authority and his role as the ruler at the end of the age. Well, that's a summary. That's basically a summary of the whole class. So thank you for coming. I hope you have a nice dinner tonight. We'll see you next time. Okay?
And Ralph, Ancient of Days.
Ancient of Days. When you read that, think, and you could go back in chapter 7 to verses 9 and 10 is where it really starts to mention the Ancient of Days. Okay? And the Ancient of Days there is a reference to God the Father. Okay? In verses 9 and 10, Daniel sees God the Father sitting on a throne with flames all around him, and he takes his seat. Okay? He takes his seat. And when a king takes his seat, what happens? Yes, but when a king takes his seat, it's usually to make a judgment about something, or to not pass a law, but to state something that is law. Okay? Something really, really important. In the Catholic Church, when the Pope sits, and they emulate this, when the Pope sits on his throne and speaks, it's called, he's speaking ex cathedra, and they believe it's speaking as if God was speaking, because he's there in that place on the throne. It's a big deal for them. Okay? The topic of the Son of Man is rarely taught in evangelical churches. And I think that's because it's an assumed topic. Okay? That the assumption is when you see Son of Man, it's a reference to his humanity. Many commentators gloss over it and explain it purely as Jesus referring to his own humanity. If you go to Google or go to YouTube, and if you put in why is Jesus the Son of Man? Ask the question. And start reading commentaries or listen to people. 85 or 90% of them are going to tell you it's humanity. It's Jesus referring to his humanity. In many of those cases, we can surmise that these commentators have really not studied it by their very general remarks. And that's what I found. They make very general remarks about it. They don't get into specifics very much. Many of the commentaries about the Son of Man demonstrate a very shallow level of research and investigation and consist mainly of opinion. And that's because a lot of the people that publish commentaries or have ministries or are doing regular YouTube videos, they are under the pressure of constantly producing material. So they hear something, they attach themselves to it, and they espouse the same thing. And I will tell you that I've done a reasonably thorough literature review of scholastic essays, papers, and books. I spent more than a year researching and studying just to prepare this book. Okay? In fact, the actual writing of the book occupied very little of my time compared to the time that I spent researching and learning about this fairly thorough topic. Okay, so any questions before we move on to some background about why Jesus is the Son of Man?
So this is your last book?
No, that's my 9th book. My 10th book was just published in May, is Who Are the Saints?
So this has been out for a little while?
It was out in December 25.
So Ralph
Yes, Lou.
was saying that if he would have said, I'm son of woman, he would have been declaring that he was a earthly person.
Hi, come on in, Eric.
Rather than man.
We'll answer that later on in the class.
Okay.
It's a good question. That's a pretty interesting question. I got to give that some thought. That's a good question. Okay, so here's some background to this subject. So many scholars consider the term "son of man" to be an Aramaic idiom. Here, pass this back to Eric, please. A lot of scholars consider this term "son of man" an Aramaic idiom, since Daniel 7 was written in Aramaic. Did any of you know that almost half the book of Daniel was written in Aramaic, not Hebrew? Okay, it's a true statement. Okay, so they think, or they theorize, that that's what it is. It's an Aramaic idiom. Did you also know that Jesus probably spoke 3 languages? What's that?
I know that person who spoke Egyptian.
Egyptian?
Yeah, because he said I was raised in Egypt for a short time.
Yeah, I don't know that he actually spoke Egyptian, but we're pretty solid to say that he spoke Aramaic. Okay? That was the language that was commonly used in that day. And we know that he spoke Hebrew. He was raised as a Jew. All the Hebrews spoke Hebrew, right? And then there's this other language, which is Koine Greek, which was actually the trade language of the Romans. All right? So he would occasionally speak in that language if he was talking to the Gentiles, for example. All right? So now you have this whole issue about Bible translation and how the Bible came about, which I'm not going to go down that road too far, but you have, let's say Jesus was speaking in Aramaic, and Matthew is going to write down what Jesus said, right? Well, Matthew is recording it in Koine Greek, but Jesus spoke it in Aramaic. So Matthew is interpreting the Aramaic, and he's writing it in another language. It's not unlike if you were a bilingual person and you heard it in one language and then you wrote it down in English, right? It's kind of the same thing. All right. So some scholars, when you get into scholastic papers and stuff like that, some of them make a big deal about this stuff. All right. I think there's less of a big deal to be made about it, actually. But I just thought I would show you that we believe these are the 3 main languages that were used in that day by everybody, not just Jesus. The Aramaic, though, of Daniel 7:13 literally reads, the man. You take the Aramaic and go do a direct translation to English, whereas our English translated Bibles render it as Son of Man. Okay? So this is where some people in the scholastic community have a little difficulty about this. However, upon closer scrutiny and examination, the use of Son of Man in Daniel 7 appears to be literal and not figurative. Okay? And it's important to identify in your Bible when you read things, we were just talking about this earlier, whether it's literal or whether it's a metaphorical statement. Right? Jesus told us to be the light of the world. Is that literal or metaphorical? Yeah. He didn't tell us to run around with a flashlight. Right? He said be salt and light of the world. There's two metaphorical references, right? But Daniel 7:13 appears to be literal in context. We're going to talk about hermeneutics and how to interpret the Bible a little bit because it's going to help us dealing with this term Son of Man. Daniel 7:13. Now I use the NASB Bible, New American Standard Bible, okay? And sometimes I quote from the King Jimmy. NASB is, I kept looking in the night visions, and behold, with the clouds of heaven, one like a son of man was coming, and he came up to the Ancient of Days and was presented before him. This part here becomes really, really important. You'll see later on. Scholars generally agree that Jesus' reference to himself as the Son of Man in the New Testament falls into three primary categories. So there are the earthly references of it. If somebody could look up Matthew 8:20, I'd appreciate it. And read it out loud whenever you get it.
And Jesus saith unto him, the foxes have holes, and the birds of the air have nests, but the Son of Man hath not where to lay his head.
So there is a reference of Jesus referring to himself as the Son of Man, and that's a very earthly, that's a very, his humanity is being referenced there. Okay? He doesn't have a home or a house or a condo, By the way, do you notice that God doesn't really have a home or a house? Right? I mean, we had, when God established the law with I don't know what that is. Everybody please silence their phones. When God established the Jews roaming in the desert, they had the tabernacle, and he existed in the Holy of Holies as the Shekinah glory of God. He was a fire at night, a pillar of cloud during the day. And then in Solomon's temple, he came and he occupied, the Shekinah glory of God came and occupied the Holy of Holies. But then after that, he never occupied Herod's temple, the one that existed in the day of Jesus. He never occupied that temple. Okay? So God doesn't really have a home. So he's suffering. How about Mark 8:31? The way I like to do it is just call out the verse, and whoever gets there first, read it with a loud voice so everybody can hear.
He then began to teach them that the Son of Man must suffer many things and be rejected by the elders, chief priests, and teachers of the law, and that he must be killed and after 3 days rise again.
There you go. That's one of the verses I was referring to earlier when I was paraphrasing it. And then there is the apocalyptic verses here. How about Matthew 24, 27, and 30? We'll just ask those two, if somebody could look that up. Matthew 24, 27, and 30. Go ahead, Barb.
For as the lightning cometh out of the east and shineth even unto the west, so shall also the coming of the Son of Man be.
And how about 30?
And then shall appear the sign of the Son of Man in heaven, and then shall all the tribes of the earth mourn, and they shall see the Son of Man coming in the clouds of heaven with power and great glory.
That's one of my favorite verses. You'll hear me refer to that verse all the time. But notice she said, coming on the clouds. Remember Daniel 7:13? Right. You'll see the connection. It's coming. The phrase Son of Man has sparked tremendous scholarly debate to the point that the ongoing uncertainty is now known as the Son of Man problem. Okay? They call it the Son of Man problem. Because, see, sometimes people are too smart for their britches. Okay? And they get into things and they start debating each other, and it's they can't get out of it. They just keep intellectually debating. Okay? And that's where this thing, the Son of Man problem, is today. And actually, it's been that way for over 50 years. Interpretation and debate ensues. So, look at this statistic. This is amazing. In the late 1970s, one scholar estimated that over the preceding several decades, so you're going back into the 50s and 60s, the Son of Man problem had more journal articles devoted to it than any other New Testament topic. How about that? That's a lot. Okay? I mean, there's a lot of stuff in the New Testament that you could write papers about, right? But more of them were devoted to the Son of Man problem than anything else. And that was published, that was Larry Hurtado, that was published in 2018. To illustrate the degree to which there is academic debate about the term Son of Man in the Bible, on the first page of his very valuable book, Benjamin Reynolds writes the following. Jesus' use of the phrase, hahos to anthropon. Let me stop. Is there anybody here that can speak Greek? Nobody here speaks Greek? That's good. Then none of you will know how badly I butcher it. Okay? Because I don't speak it either. I'm winging it when I read it like that. Okay? The Son of Man in the Gospels, Jesus' use of the phrase Son of Man in the Gospels has continued to be a conundrum for New Testament scholarship and for the scholarship of early Judaism more broadly. So it's not just New Testament. What Jesus meant by the phrase lies at the heart of New Testament Christology and the quest for the historical Jesus. In other words, trying to understand the historical Jesus. Because of the volumes of literature written on the subject, the Son of Man problem has become one of the most detailed areas of New Testament studies, which itself continues to be ever more specialized. And so Benjamin Reynolds wrote that book. It was published in 2018, and I have the book at home. I read the whole thing. It's a really good book. A significant part of the Son of Man problem lies in the attempt to prove or disapprove whether early Jews understood the entity Son of Man. Now, why would they be following this trail of trying to understand whether Jews understood the term Son of Man? Yes. But why would they be specific and say, we want to know if Jews understood it?
Prophecy?
A little bit.
Oh, they don't believe that Jesus is God.
Yeah, it could be connected to that. It has to do with the fact that because it comes from Daniel, right? That's a Hebrew book. Okay? And we learn a lot of Hebrew principles in the New Testament, and we can understand those principles even better if we look at how the Jews viewed those principles in those situations. Okay? It's a starting point for us. They've had many, many years ahead of us to look at things. Okay? So this term Son of Man came out in Daniel, and if they have a history of rabbinic history of discussing it and writing papers about it. It's a great starting point for us to go to. Okay? So that's why they do it. All right? So research by some scholars indicates that Judaism did understand the Son of Man, while research by others leads them to conclude that it did not. Oh, well, you just boxed yourself into a corner there, right? Remember I said sometimes they're smarter than their pants, you know? So that's what happened there. So then these two groups of people debate back and forth about that very topic, whether or not the Jews understood this term Son of Man. It's not the first time the scholastic study or interpretation of biblical topics has been at an impasse. Okay? So that just gives them something to write more papers about. Critical scholar John Collins writes the following. For much of the 20th century, the notion of Menschensohn, how many people know German? That's a German word. Can you see what this might mean? Men, son of man in German. Okay? Son, man. All right? Germans can create words, by the way. I spent 7 times traveling to Germany with my wife Celeste, and I was gradually learning the German language. They can create words on the fly. They can take words and put them together, boop bop a doop bop, and they got a word this long. Okay? By the way, what's the German word for computer? Computer. There's some words that are exactly the same. Okay? It's kind of fun that way. University of Chicago New Testament scholar Norman Perrin's research on this aspect led him to conclude that all of the Son of Man problem studies he reviewed had the following things in common. He said there existed in ancient Judaism a defined concept of the apocalyptic Son of Man. Do you know what that term means? Apocalyptic? What's the apocalypse? It's the revealing of. It's like the book of Revelation. It's the return. It's the coming of Jesus Christ. Okay? What is apocalyptic? It's the revealing of. Okay? Revelation of. It's the Greek word, apocalypsa is the Greek word for revelation. It's revealing. Okay? So, apocalyptic Son of Man, the concept of a heavenly Redeemer figure who's coming to earth as judge would be a feature of the drama of the end times. So the Jews had this, they did understand that a Redeemer figure was going to come to the earth as judge. Okay? Now, we commonly call that Messiah. Right? Jews commonly call it Messiah. What did Peter say to Jesus when Jesus said, who do people say that I am? He said, you're the Christ. And what does that translate out of? The word Christ means the Messiah or the anointed one. Okay? So, Jesus is identified by many titles in the New Testament, yet none as frequently as the Son of Man. Do you have any idea how many times Son of Man appears?
92 in the Old Testament.
Just seeing if you're paying attention.
92 in the book of Ezekiel.
Some people have the book in advance and they're reading ahead. Even when others called him Messiah or Son of God, he most often chose to describe himself using this title as Son of Man. So could somebody look up John 4:25 and 26, please? John chapter 4:25 and 26.
So again, the numbers of time that was used is what it was, 7
81 in the Gospels.
and how about the Old Testament?
Well, I'm going to show you why it's a little bit of a fluid count, because it depends on whether you use King James Version or the NASB. And there's some textual things where one of the texts has it and another one doesn't. And so, it doesn't, there's no consequences to whether it's this number or that number. The point is, it's a big number, right? Go ahead, Barb. You have John 4?
The woman saith unto him, I know that Messiah cometh, which is called Christ. When he is come, he will tell us all things.
And verse 26?
Jesus saith unto her, I that speak unto thee am he.
Okay. So this is the pattern that I want you to notice in how Jesus deals with what people say about him. He lets them say what they want to say, and when it's true, he acknowledges it. Okay? It's a pattern. Many modern day believers assume that Jesus referred to himself primarily as the Messiah or the Son of God. Did you have that belief before you came to this class tonight? Huh? You ask people all the time, what did Jesus call himself? They'll say, the Messiah or Son of God. Right? It's not really true. The facts are that he only implied being the Christ 11 times in the Gospels and the Son of God only 5 times. How about that? That's called a factoid. He never directly stated, I am the Christ. As close as he did was what we just heard in John 4:26. But he said, I am. Okay? And his use of I am also had a double meaning. Can you think of what the other meaning would be?
I am.
Yeah. Where did you first hear of the term I am in the Bible?
When he told Moses, who are you? Who tell me who are.
Yeah. He said, I am. And so when the Jews heard Jesus say, I am, how do you think they understood it? Oh, he's calling himself God. It made their head explode. Okay? It made steam come out their ears. Right? So Jesus was doing this all the time with the Jews that were surrounding him and his ministry. We read about him with the disciples and doing miracles and stuff. He had big crowds of people, and not everybody were fans. The Pharisees were following him around everywhere because they wanted to get evidence and trick him into stuff. If you watch The Chosen, they depict that really, really well in all their episodes, okay? And so he would say things intentionally to make their head explode. Oh, yeah. Oh, yes. He did. In fact, if you go to Matthew 26 and you look around verse 63 or 64, you're going to see the last thing Jesus said to Caiaphas, the high priest, when Caiaphas asked him, are you the anointed one? And Jesus' response was intentional to make his head explode. And after they heard it, Caiaphas ripped his clothes, and the whole Sanhedrin, they all ripped his clothes, and they all said, he's got to die. This is it. We're going to kill him. Jesus had to come here to die. You see? So all these things in God's plan were all little elements, all working together to bring it to the death of Jesus Christ. Okay? Like they're little parts in a play that all add up to the same thing in the end. Every little part's important. But we don't always view it that way. We just think, he had a conversation, this is what he said. No, he said it with a deliberate intent. Okay, in only one instance, he said, I am the Son of God. How about that? Now, we might recall how John wrote about Andrew telling his brother Peter when he wrote in John 1:41. He first found his own brother Simon and said, we have found the Messiah, which is translated means Christ.
I thought you said earlier Jesus is the Son of God 5 times.
No, he only said it deliberately one time. I am the Son of God. Okay? There's other ways of saying it. In John 4:25-26 that we just read, the woman at the well said she knew about the Messiah coming. The woman said to him, I know that Messiah is coming. When that one comes, he will declare all things to us. And Jesus said, I am he, the one speaking to you. So Jesus affirmed her statement by saying, I am he, the one speaking to you. And by the way, the word he is italicized in the New American Standard Bible. And the reason why they italicize things is to show you that that was not in the original language transcript. Okay? So in the Koine Greek that they read to create your English Bible from, the word he was not there. But they put it in because it reads better in English. But when they do that, they italicize it, which is a very good thing. Some Bibles, they don't do that. They just insert words. The editors and translators insert words in your English to make it read better. And it makes you think that that was part of the original words that were recorded. So that's why I like NASB. Notice that he did not declare, I am the Messiah outright, but allowed her to raise the subject and then confirmed it. Okay? Instead, he let her be the one to bring up the subject of the Messiah. And it's at that point, that Jesus admits that those prophecies she's referring to are speaking about him. He can't deny the truth. Right? If somebody says something to him that is factual and truthful, he's not going to say, oh no, that's not me. Right? Can't do that. So he has to acknowledge it. But how he acknowledges it is what's very, very interesting. Jesus was also referred to as, here's some of the things, as the Christ, as the Son of God, as the Son of the Most High, or the highest in the King Jimmy, as Lord, as the Son of David, as a prophet, and as Rabbi. And these are just some of the occurrences of those titles. In John 10:36, Jesus repeats a phrase to the Jews who were about to stone him. He said, are you saying of him whom the Father sanctified and sent into the world, you are blaspheming because I said, I am the Son of God? It is the only instance in the New Testament which Jesus actually spoke the words, I am the Son of God. The rest of the New Testament, there is no other case besides John 10:36 in which Jesus directly and explicitly calls himself the Son of God. In each of the other instances where the title is used, he's acknowledging an assertion made by someone else. And in doing so, he asserted his divinity and the truth that he was the Son of God, but was very careful not to explicitly title himself in that way, as he so frequently did with the title Son of Man. So as we go through this, you'll see how he deliberately used Son of Man so frequently. 81 times in the Gospels. That's a lot. The Bible records that those titles were spoken about Jesus by others, but he himself never used them for self-reference. Instead, he consistently chose Son of Man. Son of Man occurs 81 times in the Gospels. It's found 30 times in Matthew, 14 times in Mark, 25 in Luke, and 12 times in John. Benjamin Reynolds writes the following. These names and others serve as an important part of the Christological witness of the New Testament, but intriguingly, Jesus never uses these designations to speak of himself. In almost every case, depending on how you count them, Jesus used Son of Man to refer to himself. Some scholars count that he referred to himself 78 times, while others count 80 or 81 times. And Matthew 18:11, for example, is not contained in many ancient manuscripts, but is included in the Textus Receptus, which is what the King Jimmy was translated from. Okay? In Matthew 25:13, Son of Man is omitted by the NASB, but is included in the King Jimmy. Okay? So this is how you're going to end up with slightly different counts. Right? It's not really important exactly what the number is. What's important is the magnitude of the number, how big the number is. Jesus referred to himself as the Son of Man more than any other title in the four Gospels. He's the only person to mention the phrase in the Gospels. How about that? Nobody else calls him the Son of Man. Think about that. Why do you think that might be? Huh? I think it's because they didn't recognize him as the Son of Man. They didn't have the connection that he was giving them when he said it so many times. And one of the things that Jesus does, and is part of rabbinic teaching in Hebrew, is repetition. Repetition is how you learn things. Over and over. Repetition. Right? So he would say things over and over. God bless you. A minor exception would be found in Luke 24:7 and John 12:34, where others use the phrase, but they're quoting Jesus. Okay? The historical investigation of the term Son of Man received significant scholarly attention, as I mentioned earlier. Numerous position papers have been written on it to determine whether it was a term known in society or one prophetically introduced by Daniel 7. The secondary document investigation focuses on whether or not the term Son of Man was used in society leading up to the time the New Testament was written. The Dead Sea Scrolls failed to produce any reference to the Son of Man, despite a recent conclusion in the June 2025 that the Qumran texts of Daniel 8 to 11, chapters 8 to 11, are much older than previously thought. Okay? And the reason why, yes.
Is the Bible for the Arab?
Qumran is an area in Israel that they found these caves, and a nomadic boy was a shepherd boy, and he had his sheep, and he saw a cave, and he took a stone and he threw it into the cave, and he heard a clay pot crash. He said, there's something in the cave. So he went in and he discovered these clay pots and told other people. So the archaeologists show up and they find out that there's all these Old Testament scrolls in there that have been saved for years and years and years and years, and they're preserved because the air is very dry over there. Okay? Humidity kills things. Humidity makes mildew, and water can make things rot, for example. So what they learned from Qumran was they found a lot of the Isaiah scrolls there. And guess what they found out? Guess what? All of the reproduction that the Jews have been doing of the Isaiah scrolls up to today accurately matched these old scrolls, hundreds of years old, that they found in Qumran. And they said, wow, that means our Bible is valid. It didn't change over time with the scribes. Okay? And if you understand anything about how the Jewish scribes did their job. Okay, we can talk about that some other time. It's very, very detailed to make sure there was no mistakes at all. They made a mistake on a page, the whole page was thrown away. Okay? Super, super accurate in how they did their reproduction. Okay, so that's what the Dead Sea Scrolls are. Look it up on the internet. There's a lot of good stuff about it. And there's a museum in Jerusalem that we were in the early 90s. We went there. It's called the Dead Sea Scroll Museum. And they have the original scroll that they found in the caves in a vacuum case. So air can't get to it, and humidity can't get to it, in an air-conditioned building, and you can look through the case and see the original scroll. Really interesting. So this became a disappointment for scholars seeking to show that the term Son of Man was used in the Jewish community before the writing of the New Testament. But there remains a robust debate in scholarship as to whether or not Jews knew, understood, and used the term Son of Man in their community. But regarding the term Son of Man, there is general agreement that Jewish apocalyptic texts, that is, texts about the end times, reflect their belief that God has a predetermined plan to conquer all the evil forces and establish his eternal kingdom. So I refer you to Daniel 2 and Daniel 7, which we'll be in a lot. But Daniel 2 has what I call the plan, God's plan for the ages. Okay? And when I wrote my commentary on the book of Daniel, this really, really impressed me. Because in Daniel 2, King Nebuchadnezzar has a dream about this statue, and Daniel is called to interpret the dream because none of his inner circle guys could interpret it. And this statue is made of different materials, and Daniel interprets it, and it turns out that each of these materials represents a kingdom starting with Nebuchadnezzar and the future kingdoms that come after him. Right? And so that's God's plan of the ages. And it says at the end of chapter 2, but the statue will be destroyed by the stone that comes from the mountain, not hewn or not cut by human hands, and it will hit the feet and destroy the whole statue. In other words, it's destroying all the remnants of those kingdoms for all time. And that stone that comes out of the mountain without human hands is what? It's Jesus. It's a metaphorical way to speak about Jesus. Okay? So when Jesus comes, it's the end of the age and everything is different. Okay? Everything is different. Okay? So, that's what they were looking for. So, I refer you back to Daniel chapter 2. It's a very interesting chapter to read. Some scholars attribute Son of Man to be genealogical in nature, and therefore assign Son of Man to be the son of the first man, Adam. Now, this is a different and interesting point of view. Okay? So this is what scholars do. They look for things. Scriptures to support this notion can be found in Romans 5 and in 1 Corinthians 15:45 to 49, where the first man from earth is compared to how the second man is from heaven. Okay? So they try to kind of make a case where, that's what Son of Man is referring to. Okay? So I go back to Romans 5 later on. You'll see what I'm talking about there. Talking about how, we have in the Bible, we have the first Adam, and Christ is referred to as the second Adam, right? So that's what they're trying to say. Another solution to the Son of Man problem is based on the occurrence of the Son of Man over 90 times in the book of Ezekiel, where God uses that term for the prophet Ezekiel. In Ezekiel 2:1 and 2:3, God said, He said to them, Then he said to me, Son of man, stand on your feet, and I will speak with you. And in 2:3, he says, then he said to me, Son of man, I'm sending you to the sons of Israel, to a rebellious people who have rebelled against me. They and their fathers have revolted against me to this very day. So you see the context here is very directly given to Ezekiel, where it says, he said to me, Son of man, stand on your feet. Okay? So in the book of Ezekiel, when God refers to Ezekiel as Son of Man, he's not referring to Ezekiel as Son of Man that Jesus is referring to. He's referring to him as a human being. In that case, it's a full humanity aspect. Okay? It's not the same. We'll get into that later because there's a chapter in my book of Son of Man occurrences in the Old Testament, and so we cover all of that later on. In that view and context, Son of Man is commonly agreed and understood by scholars to represent the humanity of Ezekiel. By extension, though, they apply that to Jesus in order to claim that Son of Man therefore represents his humanity. Okay? So this is an opinion. We think it means his humanity opinion. To those with this view, it represents Jesus' declaration that his humanity demonstrates that God became man. And as I said to you earlier, my own personal conclusion is Jesus didn't have to say that. It was evident. He was a man. He was there. He was living, walking among them, talking with them. He wept with them. He ate with them. He prayed with them. He did all these things. He slept with them, right? He didn't have to say, I'm a man. It was evident, self-evident. That human understanding leads to another view of the Son of Man, that the Son of Man is therefore equivalent to the Son of God. Okay? This is an interesting one. Yet another minority view is that Son of Man has an angelic implication. Okay? That is, the passage in Daniel 7:13 and 14 contains both humanity and angelic components. And to understand the meaning of Son of Man, we must study its context in both the Old and the New Testament. And that's what we're going to do in this class.
So,
Yes.
you're giving us all this information to make our own decision or to agree with you.
Well, the way I do my classes is I never expect or insist that anybody agree with me. In my eschatology classes, I tell people, I'm going to teach you my eschatology. Everybody that teaches the Bible teaches what they believe it says. And that's what they're obligated to do. So I do the same thing in my eschatology classes, okay? But I encourage people and I say, because we know that there are groups of people with different eschatological views, you must make up your own mind for yourself. Okay? I'm not trying to force my view on anybody. All right? I'm going to share with you what I learned. All right? But you have to decide for yourself. I'm a big one of this. I do not try to win people to my team. And some people do that. Some people say, well, this is what I think, and you should think that too. I don't do that because I think that's wrong. Okay? You read the Bible, use your own intellect, use your own understanding. I'll explain to you the basis for my view. Okay? You can accept it or reject it. You can challenge me, by the way. I'll accept a challenge from anybody, but it has to be done in a certain way. It has to be based on what you see the Bible actually says. I will not accept any challenge where somebody says to me, well, we always believe so-and-so. Okay? That doesn't work. Or how about this? Well, so-and-so teaches this. No. You're not going to challenge me with what somebody else says because you follow that. You look in the Bible. If you see something and you want to challenge me based on the Bible, I'll be glad to sit and talk with you about it. That's how we have good intellectual debate and exchange of ideas, and that's how we learn from each other. Okay? Okay. You see, I developed, as a brand new Christian, I developed my first eschatological view because I didn't do what I just told you. I didn't read it for myself in the Bible. I didn't develop my own idea. I heard some other people talking about it, and I said to myself, well, these guys have been Christians for 50, 60 years. They know the Bible. They can quote verses all over the place. It must be true what they say. And so I made their view my view. And then later I read Matthew 24, and I found that they were all wrong. So I learned a hard lesson. So I encourage everybody, read it for yourself. Okay. We got 6:01 now. We're going to stop right here, and we'll pick it up next week. Any questions or other? That's a good question, by the way. Really good question. Anybody else have any questions or comments? Something you want to talk about? Sometimes I go off onto a little bunny trail. Okay? I try not to be too long on the bunny trail, but sometimes it's interesting. All right. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you. Especially for the book.
Next week.